Good evening and welcome to Insight. The unexpected ending of this story shook Argentina. Although everyone had already lost hope, it was as if fate had added a final chapter to this story of a life of struggle, sorrow, and even hope. Last summer, after a 37-year-long search, the founder of the Grandmothers of the Plaza de Mayo, Estela de Carlotto, finally found her grandson, Guido. She had looked for him restlessly since her daughter Laura, an opponent of the dictatorship, was executed in the 1970s just after giving birth in captivity to the little boy. At the age of 23, the girl was one of tens of thousands of the disappeared, victims of the military junta. Without ever giving up, Estela fought to retrieve all the children who, just like Guido, were stolen from their families and given away under false identities, until her dream came true, holding her own grandchild in her arms. Grandson number 114, a report by Carlos Gurovich for I-24 News.
Querido Guido,
Dear Guido, this is the last letter I write to you, because now I can tell you how much I love you while looking into your eyes. Finally, I found you.
Ya te encontré.
You found me. We found each other, dear grandson.
Nos encontramos, querido nieto. Bueno, adelante.
This letter from a grandmother to her grandson was written by Estela de Carlotto, president of Grandmothers of the Plaza de Mayo, an NGO recognized in Argentina and the world for its struggle to locate grandchildren illegally taken away from pregnant mothers, abducted and killed during the military dictatorship between 1976 and 1983. Her own daughter Laura was one of the victims.
I began the search 37 years ago, first alone, not knowing what to do, in fear, leaving aside almost all normal home activities. Why? Unfortunately, I have a daughter buried in the cemetery and a little grandson already 8 years old they took away from my daughter 5 hours after his birth in a concentration camp, where she was handcuffed and hooded, and I do not know who is raising him. 2 months later, they took her out to murder her on a road. They gave her to me totally mutilated. I could not look at her, but I was at least lucky enough to have a place to bring flowers.
Wilmar, Laura's boyfriend and the father of her child, was also tortured and murdered. 2 victims among tens of thousands. The method used by the army to combat urban guerrillas was to abduct anyone who might be suspected of being part of subversive groups, as they called them. They conducted a systematic plan of kidnappings and murders. Family members desperately searching for their loved ones learned a new term, the missing.
Al hombre que está detenido sin proceso, es uno, o al desaparecido, que es otro. Frente al desaparecido, en tanto esté como tal, es una incógnita el desaparecido. Si el hombre apareciera, bueno, tendrá un tratamiento X. Y si la desaparición se convirtiera en certeza de su fallecimiento, tiene un tratamiento Z. Pero mientras sea desaparecido no puede tener ningún tratamiento especial. Es una incógnita, es un desaparecido. No tiene entidad, no está. Ni muerto ni vivo, está desaparecido.
The concept of the missing is a very strange situation because someone took him. Nobody knows who took him, because when the family came to look for that person in various agencies, no one was holding him. He had vanished from the face of the earth. No one gave out information. You knew nothing. If he had been killed, you did not have the body. No one knew what happened, and that was the hardest thing for both mothers and grandmothers, possibly because these people, these missing, may have been dead 2 days later, a month later.
Estela walks at the front of the grandmothers, not for her daughter Laura, murdered by the military, but for her missing grandson. The ESMA, or Navy Mechanics School in the heart of the city, was a detention camp. Estela and the grandmothers went there to claim their missing children and grandchildren.
¿Dónde están los niños que nacieron en este campo de concentración? ¿Dónde están nuestros nietos? ¿Dónde están nuestras hijas embarazadas que fueron secuestradas acá? Que nos devuelvan los niños.
Estela is the symbol of the Grandmothers' Crusade, seeking local and international support like the 2008 inauguration in Paris of the Garden of Mothers and Grandmothers of the Plaza de Mayo.
I fight for truth and justice for Laura, for her 30,000 friends. I fight to find my grandson. I don't know where he is, and I travel the world because I know the world can help me find them. So, I do not want to die without embracing him.
This grandmother never lost hope that one day Guido would appear in her life. Since 1977, the Grandmothers of the Plaza de Mayo, with local and international support, managed to find 113 missing grandchildren.
I have to keep looking, and I search with hope, because here miracles take place, like someone ringing the doorbell and saying, "I have something to tell you." And it will be Guido. Therefore, I keep hoping with faith and optimism.
In the city of Olavarria, in the heart of Argentina, Ignacio, musician and a jazz pianist, led a quiet life until one day, everything changed.
One day, not long ago, I found out I was adopted. In fact, it was the day of my birthday, on June 2nd this year, and from there I decided, knowing I was not the biological child of my parents, I decided to try and see who my parents were. And one of my tools, given my age, and of this I was well aware, was my being in the range of the search for children of possibly missing persons.
Then one day, on August 5th this year, a judge who had already brought back many of our grandchildren and whom we trusted very much called me.
My Aunt Claudia Carlotto called me, the daughter of my grandmother, my mother's sister, the head of CONADI, National Commission on the Right to an Identity, the state institution responsible for carrying out the search, called me and said that the DNA test was positive, that the information had been leaked during the procedure and was now in the public domain. She said she had to tell me, even if it was not up to her, before I found out from the media, that I was the grandson of Estela de Carlotto, and she was my aunt.
When the judge saw me sitting quietly, she said, "Well, Estela, I have some very good news for you. We found your grandson, Guido." I'll tell you how I felt at that moment. I'm usually calm, relaxed. I do not cry. Just these tears that now appear running down my cheeks. I jumped, screamed. I said, "My God, is it true?" We hugged, we cried together, and I felt it was a balm to my heart. I felt like my soul was back in my body. Because I said, "Finally!" But I had to tell others. I started calling the grandmothers, my children.
I called my wife and said, "Look, love, you know that CONADI just called me?" "Ah, yes?" "Yes, the test is positive. And you know what? I'm the grandson of Estela de Carlotto. I can't believe it!" And I think I closed the phone. And then I called my friends and I did the same. And before they could begin to cry, I closed the phone. I was very quiet, as if this was normal. But it's not normal at all.
When I saw him arrive, he opened the door and crossed the garden, and I waited for him, watching him come with his friends, meeting him, seeing him for the first time, what I dreamed of for 36 years, a dream come true. Then this embrace was the first and strongest I ever felt, right? Because it was, I don't know, when you ask for a miracle and the miracle comes true.
Good afternoon, I'm Ignacio, or Guido, because she's very firm about that.
Grandmother and grandson presented themselves together for the first time. The press conference had a strong local and international impact. The media considered the appearance of grandson number 114 as the social event of the year.
Over and above what one feels, understanding what the grandmothers stand for. My grandmother's struggle. She's right here with me now. I learned many things I did not know.
World media was present to witness the reunion of the famous grandmother with her grandson 37 years after his disappearance. But no one will ever be witness to their first encounter. Annabella Gilardone, photographer and a friend of Ignacio, was able to immortalize that moment with tenderness and distance intertwined.
And suddenly they were alone in the grandmother's hall. I was with them, I gave them some space and saw the picture they made and thought it summed up all that went on there. It was yet a distant intimacy.
The moment was very intense, and it is the first photo we have of our being together this way. We were chatting and preparing ourselves for something that would be very important, something that would later be an important public appearance. I knew it would be a significant moment in the history of Argentina as well. We would be there together.
I do not want to die without embracing him. It is a dream I have. But meanwhile, I enjoyed the grandchildren of the other grandmothers because they are everyone's grandchildren.
And she succeeded in the end. So much determination. She finally fulfilled her wish. We had that one hug and a lot more. She's a great fighter. An example of perseverance in a struggle, without hatred, bearing a great pain that is the loss of a child. This pain did not stop her. On the contrary, it strengthened her. Her and the other grandmothers. I think that's why there is such great recognition of what they are as people and as an institution. In the sense, they are an example of how to surmount pain. Not everyone could do it. Well, she did it.
I didn't want to die without embracing you.
Ahora quiero vivir para seguir abrazándote.
Now I want to live to continue embracing you.
Tu abuela Estela.
Your grandmother, Estela.
And with me in studio, of course, is Carlos Gurovich, who spent months reporting on this story, researching this story. Good evening, Carlos.
Good evening, Nurit.
So, first of all, what do we know about Guido's adoptive parents?
Tal como en otros casos de apropiación,
as in other cases of appropriation, Ignacio's adoptive parents were subpoenaed to give their statement. They keep away from the media and they remain in the shadow of this great social event that took place in Argentina, in which Estela de Carlotto, leader of the grandmothers of Plaza de Mayo, turned out to be the grandmother of the child they raised. In the case of Estela, she said she neither judges them nor absolves them, but she has no interest in being in touch with Ignacio's adoptive parents, as they kept her from being in contact with her grandson for years, and in a way they obviously committed an illegal act.
So at this point, what is their legal status, these children?
Los nietos recuperados, lo primero que recuperan es su identidad.
The first thing the retrieved grandchildren recover is their identity. When they were born, they were recorded in the civil registry under fake names. They lost their identity. And the moment they find out they were the children or the grandchildren of so-and-so, They look for information on their past, they recover their lost identity, and above all, they retrieve their name their birth parents gave them.
So at this point, what do we know about how many children were disappeared?
During the whole period of the military dictatorship in Argentina, around 500 children were disappeared.
Wow. And how many were restituted?
Until August 2014, 113 grandchildren were recovered. Guido was the 114th grandchild. The impact of Guido's recovery of the fact that Estela de Carlotto, leader of the Grandmothers of the Plaza de Mayo organization, was his grandmother, was such that within 2 months, 2 more grandchildren have been recovered. Today, a total number of 116 grandchildren have been restituted.
So coming back for just a moment to the grandmothers, to Estela, how do you think they want to be remembered? What is their legacy they hope for?
The grandmothers of the Plaza de Mayo started their movement walking around and protesting in front of the government palace at Plaza de Mayo. They have transcended Argentina, and today they have gained worldwide recognition. Estela de Carlotto would like to be remembered as a simple person who fought for truth and justice.
Carlos Gurovich, thank you very much for bringing this very touching story.
Thank you, Nurit.
And that's it for us for this episode of Insight. Find us back here at the same time next week. In the meantime, from the Jaffa Port, have a great night.